What's up, everybody? Peace and unity. If you don't like philosophy, then don't waste your time with this video. Now, you may have heard an old saying. It goes, "For there must needs be opposition in all things." Now, what that means is that there is no escaping opposition. It exists in every aspect of existence. Some people are of the school of thought that you can escape ego. But what they don't understand is that anytime there is opposition, there is ego. Anytime there is identification, self-acknowledgement, self-pursuit, there is ego. And a lot of people don't really think about this. They think that they can sit down and meditate or live their life in this pure state of egoless consciousness. And that's not a bad pursuit. And also the discussion of these things have to be kept in context. That is not to say that philosophy, which I sometimes use myself, is not valid or usable, but there's always more in the world of philosophy and spirituality. So let's get into it a little further. So I wrote down some notes. The ego is that which identifies with things, including the body. Okay? It's like those who understand the idea of geometry, where you have one point, and once that point makes a line to another point, it becomes self-conscious. There's two now. There are 2 points. The line of start and where the line ends. A beginning and an end. And that creates self-recognition. So, the ego is that which identifies with things, including the body. The ego even protects the body. The ego says, "This is mine." That's what the ego does. The ego recognizes and identifies things as its own, its self. So, the body even, like you have people that want to meditate and say, focus on your breathing, focus on your breathing, get out of the mind and into reality, the physical, right? They say focus on your breathing, but what they don't realize is that, guess what? The ego slips in the back door and the attention focuses to the physical being. So now the ego is not identifying with thoughts, but the ego is identifying with breathing. You see what I'm saying? The ego is always identifying. So, for example, the ego will say, "This is mine, this is me," or "Move away from that danger." See, the ego is it can slip in so sneaky just by saying, protect yourself, protect your body from that fire, from that electricity, from that ice. So, as stated before, the ego is identity with anything, not just your thoughts, not just your material belongings, but also your body. So, the ego can even give up or sacrifice things, including the body, for the idea of a higher principle. So, the ego can give up the physical body, and it can sacrifice its own physical body for a higher principle. Like you can sacrifice your body, your physical being, for your country, right? You can go to war and you can die physically, but you do it for a so-called noble, higher principle, right? But you're still identifying, even if you're willing to sacrifice your body, you are identifying with that ideology. You might say, I'm going to selflessly give myself up for this righteous purpose. But what you're doing is you are identifying with that ideology of being a selfless, righteous person. So the ego is inescapable. So humans created morals. Morals came from humans because early in the beginning, humans realized that this thing we know as an ego could be problematic. Indeed. And it was problematic. And we had to set and establish boundaries because, as stated before, the ego identifies with things. Anything from thought to a new pair of Jordans. Ego seeks identity. So the ego is inseparable from our awareness. So you see, we had to set boundaries. We had to create morals because the ego, it just wants more and more, and it thinks everything is its own. And it keeps wanting to take and add to itself. So there had to be boundaries set so that we could live in a society and function together. So the ego is inseparable from our awareness. Even when we are seeking enlightenment, it is our ego that seeks this enlightenment, this ideal enlightenment. The ego is what seeks it. So, in all honesty, we can't be free of ego. Ego is inherently a part of our awareness. It is a part of our awareness. So you might be able to clear your mind of thoughts and become pure awareness, just observing and feeling and knowing, but ego is still inherently there. You cannot be in the physical realm and avoid the ego. So it is inherently a part of our awareness, and no matter no matter how in the moment we may be or how empty our minds may be, we will always have the sense that I am having this experience. I am having this experience in the Garden of Eden. In the Garden of Eden. In my mind. And in that garden dwells Adam and Eve, the male and the female attributes of the human mind in the Garden of Eden. And the left and the right brain hemispheres are the feminine and masculine attributes found. So for those who are familiar with the Holy Bible, you may recall that a flaming sword was placed in the Garden of Eden. And it was placed in the Garden of Eden to keep the way of the tree of life. Okay? So that flaming sword that's placed in the center of the Garden of Eden is the human conscience. The flaming sword of conscience is held by the invisible hand of the mind, which is only an extension of God's mind. So, the flaming sword that is in the center of the Garden of Eden is held by the hand of God. God being an extension of your own mind. Okay? Your mind is a micro replica of the macro universe. As within, so without. So the point of this video is simply to understand that the ego cannot be destroyed. It can only be controlled, minimized, or utilized. It's depending on what you, an extension of the macrocosm, decides to do with it. So simply put, there must needs be opposition in all things. You cannot escape opposition. You cannot escape ego. Plain and simple. So, the ego is at your disposal to fulfill your desired purposes. But, let us be cautious that we perish not by the flaming sword placed to protect the way of the tree of life. Because what is the tree of life that the flaming sword is protecting? Your existence, humanity, and everything around you. So, it's up to us to use our conscience wisely, that flaming sword that is placed in the Garden of Eden, so that we don't make stupid decisions and ruin everything or lose our awareness or our ego or our existence as we know it, our physical body. We have to choose wisely and educate ourselves and progress. Till next time, peace.